Hello, everyone. Welcome back. My name is Jeff Mendelson, and this is the One Big Tip podcast. My guest today is Bonney. Anne is a keynote speaker at Your Change Speaker and the author of Get Over It, 47 Tips for Embracing the Discomfort of Change. She is the authority on managing change with confidence and resilience, with relatable stories from growing up overseas, running international marathons, and volunteering at an elephant sanctuary. She also has clients including Under Armour, Marriott Hotel, and Wells Fargo, and is a proven leader, an effective educator, and mindset shifting presenter who can catalyze powerful change in organizations and people's lives. It's going to be an ultra fun conversation today. Anne and I just spent the last 10 minutes on the pre-call just really nerding out on this stuff. So I'm really excited. Anne, thank you so much for joining me, and Jeff, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So there are a lot of accolades in that intro. You know, you have done so much and you've been around the world. Some of that has made me pretty jelly. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what makes you so amazing.
Well, mostly it's the hair, but I've moved around a lot as a kid. So we lived in Saudi Arabia and Egypt and Greece, and that kind of sparked a bit of a gypsy soul. And so I just kept moving and kept traveling. And as I went through life and my careers as a special ed teacher and an animal trainer, and then I got into corporate, and I just kind of kept following the things that felt right and felt good. And it's been a pretty good ride.
You know, what's interesting about that is not many people have those kinds of experiences, right? Just being, just being able to travel around with your parents and get all those rich experiences in other countries that most of us won't be able to visit or visit anytime soon. And then, just sort of embracing, like you said, the part that feels good. I guess what my biggest question here is, what was it like going into corporate after being such a free spirit like that? That had to be soul crushing.
No, not at all, actually. I mean, I started out with Under Armour in 2002. That was kind of my first big kid job. And it was a small company at that point. We were only 80 people. And it was just really an exciting place to be, where we were all doing everything we needed to do to make that little engine go. And it went. And 10 years later, I moved on. But I kind of grew up with Under Armour and grew into that corporate job and identity. And then it got soul crushing. So I left it behind.
I love it. So tell us a little bit about what you're doing right now. So, you're a keynote speaker, you're a podcaster, you've written a book. Tell us a little bit about that experience and why that is so important for you to get your good word out there.
Yeah, well, and I think you kind of nailed it earlier when you said a lot of people don't have the experiences that I've had. And with a lot of those experiences has come a confidence and a knowledge on how to deal with change and how to deal with unknowns when oftentimes they, really paralyze people in their lives and through reaching out and getting the things that they want to get. And so one of the things that I decided after I left corporate was I want to help people embrace unknowns and embrace change and become more resilient so they can just be happier people, whether it's, teaching high school or running around the world, whatever it is that you do, as long as it's making you happy, you're a good person in the world, and you're nicer to me at the grocery store. So ultimately it's very selfish.
I love it. But one of the things that's interesting about change, especially when you're in the middle of a career change or changing your focus within your career, right? That can be hella scary, right? That can be, something where it's like, before I was in sales, but now I just want to be in account management, or I want to move up into a C-level type environment. There is so much negative self-talk that goes into it. I mean, I know for myself, when I started, I feel like I've been forced to reinvent myself. I'm like my sixth reinvention, over the past 30 years of my career. And what happens is that you're really thinking about how, I think first and foremost, who was the kid? I was the kid that started in high school. What am I doing behind a microphone now? right? Those are the kind of things that, that get to me. It's like, I can't cold call, therefore I'm not in sales. But, lo and behold, I'm in sales every freaking day, trying to make it happen, and it manifests itself in a lot of different, in a lot of different ways. Let's talk a little bit about how you help people figure that out and, sort of get rid of that negative self-talk, but also be able to play on the strengths. It's like, it's one thing to just, blow sunshine their way. Yeah, you're great, but to get people to believe it and to get people to take action on it, that is a real skill. Talk to us a little bit about that and what that looks like in your world.
Yeah, sure. Well, one of the things that I do in my keynote is I work on normalizing that fear, that discomfort, because ultimately we're fighting against our brain that believes that same is safe. And so if you are uncomfortable with unknowns and change and all that stuff, that is normal. Your brain's doing its job, which is great. And I introduce people in my keynote to Sally, which is you can name yours whatever you want, but my inner voice of doubt. And the problem with Sally is she knows all of the things you've messed up, all the things that you don't know, all the things that are bad, all the things that could possibly happen. And when things are unknown and things are changing, she reminds you of all of the things that could possibly go wrong and ever have and ever could. And overcoming that voice is really hard. Then you add to that the social pressure of what we should be doing and how we should be running our businesses. And, all of the cultural messages that we get and all of our family messages and all that stuff. So you're getting all of this input. And it's really hard sometimes to say, you know what? I want to quit my teaching job and go be an animal trainer, which I said to my parents in 1997, to which they were like, what? But, and of course, all my voices of doubt were going as well. But it ended up working out really, really well for me. I was happy. I got to have this super cool job, but it was because I said, this is the right thing for me. So let me see what I need to do to try to make this happen. And the cool thing was, all along the way, as I'm doing this research and starting to learn things, I could always have turned around and go back. So it's figuring out what thing that's right for me, even though sometimes it doesn't go along with what everybody says you should do and what that voice in your head, which is protective, but it's 100% risk averse. It's going against all of that.
I love the way you articulated that, because, what you're talking, first of all, by giving that fear a name, by giving that self-talking person a name, I think is really critical, because then you can have conversations with them, right? Then you can be like,
totally,
bitch, shut up. Right.
That's right. That's exactly right.
That's the first one. Right.
I like to be more gentle with mine, because ultimately he's just trying to keep me alive. Right. So I'm like, what, Sally, I get it. And you're right. But I also am kind of a badass, so we've got this.
Exactly, right? No, but the thing is that, there are so many, but there are so many things that we need to take action on, and we're not going to do it from a place of being scared. We're not going to do it from a place of being careful. I mean, it's like, people when they look at, big influencers, like, oh my God, look how easy it is. Gary Vee has a film crew following him around. It's like, well, yeah, he's Gary Vee, but guess what? He started with 0 followers, just like you, just like everyone else, right? And what happens is that, when you start to think about those types of, relationships, before this person was this person, they were actually, they were pounding pavement and, eating a lot of crap way beforehand. Right. And that's what I think a lot of people don't understand is you have to put in the work. You have to put in the work in order to get to this. Right. It's like even winning the lottery. My wife and I talk about that. This is our plan B for a while now, right? But we know it's not going to happen. We know it's not going to be something that's going to, that's going to come up. And if it does come up, great. Then we're blessed and it's all good, right? But in the meantime, we are here to make a change in our career, your career, and all the people that we're trying to influence. Let me ask you this. When you are talking to, when you're making these presentations, how do you get them to change the state? Change the state that they're in this negative self-talk, and that, you alluded to it a little bit before, but I want to get a little deeper. How do you get them to really take on that new persona, to really quiet that self-talking voice and really take action to make the next step? How does that look?
Yeah, I think there's kind of two steps to it. The first one is acknowledging your problem, acknowledging why it's hard, acknowledging your feelings about it and saying, you know what, this sucks. I'm scared because I don't know how this is going to go. I don't know what I'm supposed to do next. And taking just a minute to acknowledge those feelings and say, yeah, this is hard. Not too long, but you take a couple minutes just to acknowledge it. Because by doing that, you shift your thinking around to the logical part of your brain. Now your brain is warmed up for you to have that conversation, like you said, with that inner voice, mine's Sally, where I say, hey, Sally, look, you're right. A lot of that stuff could happen. And and then we start to say, but what happens if this goes right? And here's all the things that I've figured out in the past. We would not make it where we are right now if we had figured out a lot of stuff, gotten through a lot of stuff, and remind yourself of those things. Because Sally will be reminding you of all the things. And you do say, you just said, how do you quiet that voice? Well, you kind of talk over her because she keeps talking and it can get exhausting. But by being able to have that argument and understand where that fear is coming from, it helps you bring in the logical part of your brain to say, you know what? We figured out hard things before. We don't know what's going to happen. And yeah, we're scared, but I think we got this. And then you move forward, or as I say, you punch it, Margaret.
There you go. You know what's interesting is that when like when you're having when you're having these conversations with yourself, right? For me, one of the biggest things I remind myself is that, listen, I got to where I am somehow, right? I've been 100% successful up until this point. May not have been the most glorious success that anyone can handle, but hey, like I got fired for my last job 14 years ago, right? And no matter when I have crappy months in business or I have great months in business, first of all, I take ownership of them both, right? The great ones, yeah, that was me, but the crappy ones, yeah, that was me as well, right? And what happens is, like when you start taking ownership of that, is you realize it's like, oh, I can't talk to girls, I don't know how to do that. It's like, well, yeah, you can, because you talk to them all day long. You just don't, you just need to switch up the context a little bit, right? Or if I'm talking to clients, like I have a big aversion to cold calling, for example. But the fact of the matter is, if push came to shove, I could do it. I mean, I read and write and speak English to a pretty high level. I can do it, right? It just comes down to being, just to relaxing, getting comfortable, and just knowing your craft, right? And of course, your craft because you went to school for it, because you have 10 years experience in it. Go reread your resume, right? Go look at all the great stuff that you've done and then come back and say, oh, I can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't live in a very self-congratulatory society, but it is good to have that dialogue going in your brain every once in a while to say, you know what? I can probably do this. I do that when I'm about to go on stage. I get nervous too, and I do this for a living.
I love it.
But it's like, I remind myself, hey, Ann, you're good at your job. Just go do it and see what happens.
Exactly. So I'd like to ask you a question about, maybe like a case study or, like how you've, of someone that you've worked with and that you were able to get a positive result out of them. Can you walk us through a little bit about how that works and, like some of the steps that you used in order to get them to that state? How did that look in your world?
Yeah, so I work mostly with large groups because I do a lot of keynotes and things like that. And I worked with a bank at one point, and it was post-COVID. They were going through a ton of change, the way they delivered services, how they interacted with their customers, everything was changing. And this was a small, Northern Michigan bank that had been working the same way for a long time. They had an incredible family-like culture in their company. And a lot of people had been there doing the job the same way for 20 years, 25 years, even a couple people had been there for 30 years. And they were having a real trouble accepting change and accepting doing this job in a different way. And it made perfect sense. But what we did was we worked together and we talked about this resistance and how it's natural and it's normal. We also talked about how we can build the team a little bit more in a way that specifically helped them to support each other through the change. And then we also talked about a really fun thing that I talk about in my keynote. I talk about problem, plan, punch it. We already talked about problem. What is my problem? Acknowledging that. What's my plan? And that's the ownership that you talked about. What can I do? And then we have to punch it, Margaret. And that's when we have to start taking action. And it goes right back to that ownership thing, where when we're in action and we're trying things and we're asking questions and we're learning things, even though the path to getting comfortable with this change may be long and dark and foggy and scary and ever changing, if we continue to take these steps and continue to punch it and continue to keep moving, we eventually get there. Like you said, it's never quite the straight path that we hope or we expect, but we eventually move forward and we get there and we feel a lot better about it. Taking, like you said, that ownership, taking action and moving forward.
I think taking ownership is one of the paramount things that for me as an entrepreneur is frankly my job. Right. Because not only do I have to take ownership for the delivery of the products that I do for my clients, but also for the safety, the happiness, the contentness of the people that work for me. Right. Because I need them to be happy. Right. I need them to, to really think about this and be like, I'm really happy at my job. I love the kind of work that Jeff is providing. And yeah, I want to stick around. That all flows into corporate culture. It flows into, just creating positive vibes and just making sure that, if I'm having fun doing it, I want you to have fun doing it as well. I want my clients to feel that we're all having fun over here and we're making money and it's great. And, that's really what it's all about. So I really appreciate you.
The beauty of it.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And the beauty of it is when you're role modeling that as the leader, they then start to take that on themselves, not only at work, but in their lives. And studies have shown that people who take that ownership and take that responsibility for their own situation are more resilient. They're happier, they're stronger, they're healthier. They have all the better things that we want in life. So that ownership thing in your life, in your job, all of that is huge.
I love it. And thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
Where can people learn more about you and how can they reach out to you directly if they want to learn more?
Yeah, sure. Yourchangespeaker.com is my website. You can find me on Facebook, Speaker Ann Bonney, on the Instagram as well. And at annbonney.com is the email if you want to go direct. But Your Change Speaker will give you all the information you need, including the books, Bill. Get Over It is the first one. Get Them Over It is the second one for managers.
Amazing. And thank you so much for joining me. This has been such an enjoyable conversation. And I really appreciate you taking the time to break down these concepts for us today.
My pleasure, Jeff. It was great to be here with you today. Thanks for